Hey everybody, Jane here, and today I am doing a book review on Cure, A Journey into the Science of Mind Over Body by Jo Marchant. This is an uncorrected proof, an ARC, and it went on sale January 2016, so I am way behind on some of my ARCs. I was sent this years ago and just never got to it, so I'm going through to try to get any of my backlog ARCs read. I wish I'd read this sooner, but I think that it is the perfect time in my life for me to read it. So despite being sad that I read it so late, I do think it was the right time for me to read it. This book is about how our minds and bodies work together in our health. And when I first picked it up, I kind of was worried it was going to be a woo-woo type book, and it was going to be one of those books that's all like, yes, you can have complete health if you just work with your mind. Surprisingly, and I'm so glad, it is very scientific minded. It is not at all like that. It is very much like one of the things the writer says right away is certain things you can only cure with medicine. This is not the kind of woo-woo book that I kind of worried it might be, but instead it is a book about how our minds do influence our bodies, and not just our mental conscious mind, but our unconscious mind. One of the things it talks about that I was so thrilled to hear somebody mention was that a lot of times when we're sick, the symptoms we're having are not necessarily caused by the virus we're having or the bacteria infection or whatever, but they're caused by our body's reaction to it, which is an interesting discussion, especially with it being about to be flu season and getting flu shots. A lot of people are like, well, last time I had the flu shot, it made me sick. The first time I had a flu shot, it made me super sick. But I've heard discussions recently, and this really kind of is mentioned in the book and resonates with me so much, that it's not that you're getting the flu from the flu shot, it is that your body is acting like you're getting the flu. So you're getting the fatigue, you're getting the aching, you're possibly even running a fever because your body is trying to fight this dead virus, dead or very weakened virus, and so you feel sick. I'm currently getting over a cold, and it was interesting, like I was more aware of what my body does when I'm sick. The fatigue, the aching, all of the things happening that are telling me you need to stop, you need to rest, you need to sleep so that the body can cure itself. And that's kind of the type of mind over body connection stuff that is talked about in this book. And there's a little bit on like meditation and prayer and stuff like that, but it's not super woo-woo. It's not super like, if you just think yourself well. No. I did give this book a 4 out of 5. I feel like this is a book that everybody in the health profession should read. Probably it should be required reading in nursing school and maybe even in medical school, because it talks about something that we don't necessarily think about in healthcare that we need to, which is our minds and bodies work together for our overall health. That's why placebos work. There's a lot of discussion in this book about the placebo effect, and particularly why we have to have placebos studies instead of just were people better with the medicine or without it, because placebos are a thing, and sometimes just giving a person a pill can cure them or make them feel like they're cured, or at least minimize their symptoms because of the way we believe. We believe that we're going to feel better. And so this book talks about some of the science behind the placebos and even just how we handle pills. There was a discussion about certain medications were tested and they found they could lower the dose, and it didn't necessarily affect how well they worked. People expected them to work and their bodies responded appropriately. So it's really interesting when we talk about the chemicals in the brain, the Pavlovian responses that humans have to things. So much good stuff in this book. It was really interesting, such a fun thought-provoking read. Now, I will say, I am just in clerical side of healthcare. I love healthcare. I'm fascinated by healthcare, but I'm not a doctor or nurse, and I'm not entirely sure how accurate the studies are. So it is possible that I am thinking this is an amazing book, but science says otherwise. I didn't double check the references or anything like that, but this book made a lot of sense to me, and made a lot of sense to me that we in the medical profession need to be focusing on whole body health, and for myself too, whole body health, and not just this is what your body's doing, let's give you a pill to make it better. A couple other things besides the placebo effect and the body's responses to illnesses that were touched on that I really wanted to point out and that I think are really important about this book. One is that they are looking at using virtual reality as a painkiller. And I thought that was really interesting. So there are certain people who are suffering from physical debilitating pain, and they're at the maximum safe amount of pain medicine. Particularly, they were testing on burn victims. And there's a couple things they're trying to do to lower that pain even more than they can with the medicine. So like, this author in this book does not at all say, let's get rid of medicine and let's just switch over to mind stuff. It says, let's try to use medicine and mental stuff together. So they were doing tests on burn victims who are having trouble, even maxed out on pain medicine, by putting them in virtual reality worlds, basically like getting them into a game and trying to see if that and/or hypnosis helps lower their pain to a manageable level when the medicines can't. And I thought that was so interesting, and that makes a lot of sense. And I know, as somebody who suffers psychologically, sometimes being able to focus on something can really help with responses to things. Now, mind you, my stuff is mostly mental, but even when I'm physically sick, if I have the flu or something, if I'm watching a show, that is easier for me to deal with my pain and my feeling miserable and sick than it is to, just lay there and feel miserable and sick. So I think that was interesting, and something that we don't necessarily think about enough is that sometimes things like distractions are very important for patients, which I'm glad most hospitals now have televisions in the room. I do think that's important. I have also read studies about patients who their doctors interacted with them, gave them a little more human contact and attention, and they tended to have better patient outcomes than patients who the doctor was quicker. I read books about if a doctor touched a patient, like put their hand on their hand before a surgery, there were better outcomes. And all that kind of stuff is the kind of stuff that's talked about in this book, although I don't think those particular studies were mentioned. But just generally understanding that there is more to body health than just medicine. With that, though, one of the challenges in medicine, as we are trying to validate things such as virtual reality for pain, along with pain pills, or possibly using placebos or virtual reality or something to lower the pain dose needed, is that funding is an issue. It is really hard for companies to get funding to understand about how our bodies work and the mind part of health, because the pharmaceutical companies are not funding them. Now, I know everybody has kind of mixed feelings about pharmaceutical companies, and here is the thing. I wish medicine wasn't so expensive, but I'm glad medicine's there. There are a lot of medical conditions now that people would die from if we didn't have the medicines, and pharmaceutical companies are funding studies. I'm not sure that they are, they're not necessarily the good guys, but they aren't the bad guys either. We would be a lot worse off if pharmaceutical companies didn't exist. Now, could they be a little more ethical and moral? Oh, absolutely, I'm sure. But the point is, they're not funding these studies. And so we need to find alternative ways to look at these studies, because they're not getting, pharmaceutical industry has no interest in in studying things that will make people need less of their pills, or will prove that their pills are only as effective as the placebos. And that's another thing that's talked about. There is apparently some medicines that are not really more effective than the placebos, or it's like this much more. So yeah, this book was just incredibly mind-opening, and I feel like a lot of people would really, really enjoy it if you're interested in medicine, if you're interested in the medical field, in whole body wellness, but also if you're somebody who doesn't want to get too much into the woo-woo stuff. Like, I absolutely firmly, having taken a lot of classes in college about medicine, believe that medicine is important. And I don't think that, every time we get sick, we should just go get our back cracked by a chiropractor, or listen to some Reiki, or have a massage, or any of that stuff. But that doesn't mean those things don't have a place in health at times. And also, I believe in healthcare, we need to be looking at all of the therapies available to patients and trying different things for people who traditional therapy doesn't work. They talk a lot about like irritable bowel and things like that, where there's just not effective therapies, especially in therapies that we don't have effective drugs. Alternative therapies may work better than nothing at all. And sometimes better than nothing at all is all we've got. So I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it. I wish everybody in healthcare would read it, and I wish we could have a healthcare system that was more aware of and interested in the mind and body connection. Again, this book is not wish yourself well, which is what I was kind of concerned about and one of the reasons it took me so long to read it, but it is very much our mind is important to healing our body, and there is a connection between our mind and body that we oftentimes don't acknowledge, and we really should. All right, guys, this is Jane. If you have any comments, please leave them below. If you've read that book, I would love your opinion about it. Please like if you liked this video. Subscribe if you would like more content. Also, my social media is below. Included in the social media below are links to books that I've written on both Smashwords and Amazon. I am mostly a romance writer, but there's some other books thrown in there too. Please check them out if you think you might enjoy them. Some of them are on Kindle Unlimited, and if you have the Kindle Unlimited program, you can read them for free. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.